Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. This is Conservation in the Classroom, where you get the opportunity to interact with one of WWF's very own experts or scientists. My name is Kate. I will be your host today. And as many of you know, November is Native American Heritage Month, and we could not be more excited to be joined by Monica Rattling Hawk today. Monica is here to share her story about her connection to nature and teach us all a little bit about how we are all connected. So, Monica, we are very happy to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Should we start? I want to just introduce myself initially and use some of my own language in my introduction to allow you to understand that I come from this place and that I'm Indigenous and that this is part of our language. So, Madakiapi, Chante Washte Nape Chuzapi, Monica Rattling Hawk Machiapi, Le Ampetu Ki Lila Washte, Lati Quiver Tiwahe Na Wamblee, South Dakota, Pine Ridge Reservation. Good day. I greet you all with a warm, heartfelt handshake. My name is Monica Rattling Hawk, and I am a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation, and I come from the Quiver family. I am presenting to you from Wamblee, South Dakota.
Monica, let me pause there. We're going to get our on-screen guests on here to say hi to you, and then we'll keep moving, okay? So we're really excited. We want to dive in. We want to give our on-camera guests a chance to say hi as well. So first, let's introduce our Greater Johnstown Middle School coming to us from Johnstown.
Good energy.
Hi, everybody. Next up, we have Mark Twain Middle School, Miss Hudson's class. And last but not least, joining us from Brooklyn, New York, we have Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Oh, he might be off camera. Say hi. Well, we are all grateful to be here and can't wait to hear your presentation. So let me pull up your slides here, Monica, and then you can take it from here, okay?
Okay. Well, as I said, good day. I greet you all with a warm, heartfelt handshake. My name is Monica Rattling Hawk, and I am a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation, and I come to you from the Quiver family, and I am presenting to you from Wamblee, South Dakota. The word Wamblee means eagle in Lakota, the language of the Indigenous people of this area. This place is home to Eagle Nest Butte, an ancient eagle catching site, and a landscape that allows growing of food for eagles and in part of one of the 5 remaining grasslands in the entire world. A place where the roots of the grasses still reach down into the soil and capture carbon, where the grasses provide protection for life that grows in them, such as birds, bison, cattle, deer, coyotes, prairie dogs, and the black-footed ferret. This grassland provides food and maintains the connections for all in the life circle. Before I begin, I want to share a little challenge with you to help you acknowledge the connections that exist from the very earth that help to sustain these connections and to recognize that there are roles we all have in sustaining and maintaining these connections. When I looked at the words that you all shared in the trivia about your connections, I was really happy to see everything everybody put up there, because as a young person, you're truly recognize that connection that you have to nature. Today, after hearing this, go and find a place that you can safely touch the earth in the morning. If you cannot find a place, gather a small piece of earth that you can place in a container and take to your private spot in your room, wherever you can find a place. Also, take a cup of water, place next to your piece of earth, and acknowledge its life-sustaining power. Say thank you. Listen briefly, nothing else. Then acknowledge. say thank you, drink your water, and do again the next day, continuing to maintain that awareness of your connection to the earth and to water. This small exercise will allow us to acknowledge all of the roles that exist on this place, your place. No matter where you are, take the time to feel and express, and then listen to Unchi Maka, our grandmother earth, and our first medicine, water, our mini. Do this in the morning wherever you can, in your room, on your step, wherever you feel comfortable. Next slide. Now I want to share an acknowledgement. The Oyate, people. That's the word we use for people, and it's the nations. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one, and we give greetings and thanks to each other as a people. We are all related. Unchi Maka, Grandmother Earth. We are thankful to our grandmother, the earth, a living being, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about her. She freely opens so that we may spread seeds and harvest her bounty. We are full of peace that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. Wisdom she shares freely. We are all related. Next slide. Mini, water, is a relative as well. Mini Wachoni, water is life. We give our thanks to all waters of the world for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. We recognize the many forms of movement, rains, streams, rivers, waterfalls, mists, oceans. Together, we send greetings and thanks to a living being. After all, our bodies are made up of 60% water. In our language, we have a saying, Mini Wachoni, water is life. We are all related. Next slide. The root nation, plants, medicines, foods, and grasses. Let us acknowledge and honor the root nation and their place in sustaining the earth. The food, the trees, the grasses, all that sustain the roots in Unchi Maka and provide a protective relationship and connect to us all that live within and upon Unchi Maka. We thank and honor our harvest of beauty and health so that we may all survive and thrive. We honor the medicines who from the beginning were given instruction to remove sickness, always ready to heal us. Let us honor the grasses that also speak to the air as they sustain the very soil they come from and sustain so many life forms that are seen as far as the eye can see. We acknowledge the root nations. We are all related. The heavens, also known as in our language Wakias, or thunder. The thunder, the power that lives in the west. We honor you as you bring water and new life and appreciate your protective role. Brother Sun, we honor and thank you for traveling from east to west, each day bringing a new day to all, the sources of all fires of life. Grandmother Moon, leader of all women, who governs the movement of ocean tides, measurer of time and who has an ever watchful eye on the arrival of all generations. Next, Wichakpi, also ancestor stars, we honor and thank you for the guidance as we journey, ever present, ever giving. Thank you for the dew that you bring to the plant nations. We recognize all in the heavens. We honor you. We thank you. We are all related. We honor our relatives and give thanks to all the animal life in the circle. They teach us many things and are always on the front line and give their lives up so that we can use their bodies as food, as clothing, as decorated honor. They bring healing. We honor all and celebrate continued life. We are all related. We honor our teachers, the knowledge holders who have come to help throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way are instructed to live as people. We acknowledge the ancient wisdom and give thanks. We are all related. The four winds, we honor the powers of the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help us to bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. We say thanks. We are all related. We have now arrived at the place where we end our acknowledgement. Of all relatives we have named, I thank you. I ask for forgiveness for those not named. We leave it to each individual to send such greetings and say thanks in their own way. Midaki Oyasi. We are all related. I want to share with you now a video that captures a lot of our relationships and tells a story of the connections and the bringing back of bison to the people.
For time untold, we depended on our relatives, the buffalo, for everything. We followed their path. They gave us our shelter, our clothing, our food, and our direction. Our people respected the buffalo. We lived together, in balance with each other, in balance with the land. Then, everything changed. In the beginning, we heard only rumors. Foreign people were coming to our land. Wherever they appeared, the buffalo vanished. But here, we still had what we needed. The last days of our buffalo arrived with the railroad, the hide hunters, and the military. Buffalo fell by the millions. Our relatives, slaughtered for sport, for hides, for tongues. We fought, but as the buffalo and other game disappeared from our lands, we began to starve. So we turned to the forts for food. They moved us onto reservations at a time when few buffalo remained. In 1883, 2 short years after the arrival of the train, the last Fort Peck buffalo was killed. Our great buffalo nation had dwindled from millions to just a few hundred. For a century we survived, the buffalo living in our hearts in ceremonies, but gone from our land. Yellowstone was the buffalo's last stronghold. There, they began to recover, but like us, were confined by government boundaries. After a century without buffalo, 19 tribes came together to begin the process of bringing our relatives back home. We met the many challenges with the resilience of a buffalo facing into a storm. After years of hard work and planning, we welcomed buffalo back to Fort Peck. Many among us had never seen a living buffalo before. It was a time of rebirth and celebration. We sang our relatives home, and they danced when their hooves touched the grass. Today, our leaders are bringing our buffalo back, not just onto our land, but into our lives. In time, we hope that more tribes will join us in welcoming our relatives home. The buffalo have always taken care of us. Now it's our turn to take care of them.
Palamiae, I'm saying thank you to you all for listening, for taking the time to journey with me during this presentation, for opening up your space to hear from me and to see, to hear, to feel our excitement as a people as we share our connections and our story. Palamiae, thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. That was great. We are going to go ahead and get started with the Q&A part of the program now. So to our special guests on camera, if you want to just take a couple minutes to make sure you have your questions ready so that when you're called on, you can ask them nice and loud to Monica. And just a reminder to those of you that are watching from the website, you can actually enter your questions using the Google form that you see underneath the video. And we will make sure to incorporate as many of those as we can as well. So we're actually going to start with one that was submitted through the webpage to give our on-camera groups a minute to get ready. Monica, Aaron in Houston was wondering, how did you come to work for WWF? So if you could kind of talk a little bit about your role with WWF, that would be great.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for that question. I worked here on the Pine Ridge Reservation in the landscape that we have an area called the South Unit. And I worked with the national parks and our tribe in creating a general management plan for this area. And part of that plan was restoration of bison onto that landscape. And that's where WWF entered the picture to help our tribe to look at reintroducing bison onto that particular landscape. Through time, there was a job position that came open, and I got into that position, I guess, and began working in the Northern Great Plains, and my title became Tribal Liaison of the Community. So I began working on the South Unit project and still am, and looking at moving forward with WWF, our community, and our people on restoring bison to the landscape, but also to bring the tribal voice forward on land that they own.
Okay, great. I'm actually going to ask another one that was submitted through the website. We've had a couple questions that are similar, so I'm going to kind of group them here. Christy from Montana and Mark from Maryland. We're wondering if you could kind of help talk about how we help others connect to the land. So how can, especially young people, how can we grow a deeper connection with where we live?
I think that one, as I shared in the beginning, is just taking the time to really understand your relationship with the land. Once you see and you hear and you feel what is happening, or maybe something that is missing that you don't hear or that you don't see, you can then begin saying, how can I hear that again? How can I see that particular species. Maybe it's a plant that is missing from the landscape. Maybe it's an animal that is missing from the landscape. And I think that just taking that time and reestablishing those connections and hearing and seeing what is missing and what is still there, and helping them to continue to thrive and be alive, and then to assist those that are missing to come back to the area. You know, we do bison restoration, we call it. We have an individual that works specifically with black-footed ferrets that brings them back into the landscape. So that's that's what it takes, is just really finding what is missing and what is still here, and seeing how our role, how we can either sustain them or restore them.
That's great advice. Okay, let's move to our on-screen guests here. So we will start with Greater Johnstown Middle School, our group from Pennsylvania. If you guys are ready, what is your first question for Monica? Nice and loud for us.
Are the buffaloes making a comeback?
Yes, the bison, the buffalo are making a comeback. And as you've seen in the video, the Fort Peck tribe has what they call a quarantine facility, and they are bringing buffalo from Yellowstone to the quarantine facility, and then from the quarantine facility to many tribes across the United States, clear up into Alaska. So yes, they are making a comeback.
That was a great question. Okay, Mark Twain Middle, if you're ready, it is your turn to ask a question, nice and loud for us. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
What are your feelings about the future?
When I see young people such as you having the time to care and to hear these stories, my thoughts of the future are, they're very bright. That we have youth such as you that are going to carry forward the mission and the vision and sustain Earth, and to reverse a lot of the negative impacts that have happened. So the future to me looks very bright when I see individuals such as you all caring for Unchi Makar, Mother Earth.
Okay, and let's bring in Daniel from Brooklyn. Daniel, if you're able to turn your camera on and just ask a question, make sure you're unmuted there.
How many buffaloes are there right now, and how can we help to save them?
There are, I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you that a project that we're working on here on our sister reservation, the Rosebud Sioux Reservation, they went from having 0 buffalo on the landscape to now having nearly 800 head. So there is a comeback. I can't tell you how many, I don't know. I know that it's in the thousands of buffalo, because there's different entities and groups and individuals that are restoring bison. So we have private individuals that have their own buffalo herds, we have tribes that have buffalo herds, and we have parks that have buffalo herds. So it's in thousands. There's thousands of buffalo, and the way you can help, I guess, is just continue to learn, continue to ask those questions, and continue to visit your national parks, look out and do research on them, and from there we can learn to ask those questions. You know, how can I continue to support that? We'll need veterinarians that specialize in bison. We'll need herd managers. We'll need individuals that study the grasslands and the water and those relationships. So, you know, as you grow and you continue, I say one of the biggest ways you can be helpful in that and help is continue to research and to study and to ask those questions and stay involved in the concept of bison restoration.
I hear a lot of future jobs out there for some of our young viewers right now, right, Monica? Let's go back to some of the questions that were entered into the Google form here. While we're on the subject of the buffalo, Sandy was wondering, how do you keep your life in balance with the buffalo?
I think the way we keep it in balance is always acknowledging the important role that bison play on the entire landscape, and that we're not looking down on them, we're standing beside them. And that means that staying in harmony means that we ensure that, as in the video, she said it's our turn to take care of the buffalo. Well, that means that we need to make sure that the grasses continue to stand upright. We need to protect the root nation so that the grasses are there to sustain the bison. We need to continue to say prayer and give offerings to them, and not only take from them. So there's a lot of roles that we need to play, and sustaining those connections and to live in harmony is always to acknowledge their roles and the role that they play in all of the connections.
We have a question here too from Miss Gilligan's class in New Jersey that we're wondering if there were any other species that were affected when foreign people came. So like what the video mentioned back when the buffalo were first being impacted.
I think that I could say that almost all of the species were impacted or affected when people came, because the space was occupied by these animals and these people that existed here initially. So everything was impacted because lifestyles changed. No longer were animals able to freely roam from place to place, which was so important in maintaining grasslands and those species. So when fences came up, animals were no longer freely able to roam and to consume certain areas and certain medicines. Households sprung up, the water was impacted, and so everything was really impacted because it was a complete change of lifestyle that existed prior to settlement.
Okay, we're going to go back to our on-camera group, so we'll go in the same order. Greater Johnstown Middle, if you're ready, you are up first. Nice and loud for us.
What holidays do you celebrate as Native Americans?
We have, yeah, I do. Thank you for the question. We have a variety of holidays that different people in different families celebrate. So a lot of people celebrate the same holidays that you do, and other people recognize things rather than saying a Christmas holiday. We recognize it as the winter solstice and all of the seasonal things that would go around that. And it's a great time for us to do storytelling. So we gather and we do a lot of storytelling, just like I did earlier, and we share that with ourselves. Some people do not recognize Thanksgiving because it's been a very negative thing for Indigenous people, but they recognize the fall equinox and recognizing the harvest of foods and medicines and all of that type of stuff. So we have various holidays that we do recognize, and we have holidays that we don't recognize. So, each family, each community decides that on their own. Myself, I recognize Christmas up until recently, and I now call it winter solstice. So I still do gift exchange, and really recognizing those that I'm doing gift exchange with as being a really important factor in my life, and really acknowledging that role that they play in my life.
That was a great question. Okay, Mark Twain, we are ready for you. Go ahead, nice and loud.
What is the impact on your lives now that you're bringing the buffalo back?
Powerful. It's so nice to be able, we grew up a long, long time ago, as you've seen in the video, that we lived with the bison. They were everything to us. They were our spiritual connection. We used their hide and their skull and their head in our spiritual ceremonies. We also used their all parts of their body because we knew that bison consumed medicine, so we ate the bison, and that helped us to also receive the medicines that they did. They also were our clothing and our shelter. They were everything to us. So we lost that. We really lost that. And now that we're regaining that, we're able to share that with the youth. We just done a bison harvest the other day, and we're scraping the hide now. And what we'll do with that hide is we hope to make an original teepee out of it so that it will be shelter to us. But we had very young children there with us, just the first time they ever got to see a bison. And they got to help us and see it and smell it and touch it and feel it, and it just bring back all that generational memory from long time ago that my great 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 grandparents got to experience. We are now experiencing that again today, so it's really powerful that the bison are coming back, and it means a lot to us.
Another great question. Okay, Daniel, if you are ready, go ahead and make sure your camera's turned on and you're unmuted. If you're ready for your next question, go ahead.
What status are the bison? Like, are they endangered, threatened, critically endangered?
They are not threatened anymore. They're making a comeback. So they have moved up the status to being more present on the landscape.
Another great question. You guys are doing amazing here with these questions. Okay, we have time for one more round, so I'll ask a couple from the chat and then we'll go back to our on-camera groups. There's been quite a few questions submitted through the webpage, Monica, of people that are interested in your language. So for starters, Catherine in Iowa was wondering, what language are you speaking there when you said that we are all related? And then there's been a couple questions, like Alex was wondering what it is spelled and what does the writing look like?
Okay. The language that I'm using in my introduction and throughout is what we call the Lakota language. It's part of a complete area of tribes that we call the Oceti-Sakowin, which means the 7 council fires. Within that are multiple tribes that speak different languages, and the languages are a different dialect, basically. So those further west and north speak the Lakota language, or it's with the L dialect. Those, as you move more east, speak the D dialect, or Dakota. And then as you move further up north, you're also going to hear from people within the Oceti-Sakowin speak with the N dialect. So they speak the Nakota language. So that is, I'm using the Lakota language, or the L dialect, as part of the 7 council fires and the tribes that, there's 7 tribes that use the L dialect in this area. So that's what I use. And the way that it looks and writes, we were never a people that had a written language. If you look at our history and you look at a lot of things, we had what we contained as winter counts that told our stories, that were maintained by, as I put in the acknowledgement, we acknowledge our knowledge holders. Well, those knowledge holders kept those winter counts that told the stories over the years, but it wasn't a written language like the English language that we use. So we have adopted the alphabet, basically, of the English language in writing now. So when I say Mindaki Oye Oyase, it's spelled just like it would be in English, except like the I is usually the long E sound, and it's just Mitakuye. That's Midaki. So it looks like the English writing, but there is some characters in the alphabet that combine. So like the letter C is usually cha, the cha sound, and S is both the S and the sh sound. So it looks pretty much like the English language as we're moving forward in time in writing our language.
So that's everybody's homework, okay, to practice that. While we're kind of on this subject, Narav in Florida was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about your tribe. So like how many people are there? What is the structure? Kind of just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So my tribe and our native nation, whatever you want to call it, is called the Oglala Lakota Nation. We're one of the 7 tribes within the Oceti-Sakowin, which occupied the area running down into from Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, clear up into Canada, and even down into Texas. Our bands moved around in those areas. So today we are on a land base called a reservation. Our reservation for the Oglala Lakota people is about 2.7 million acres, and it was created in an act by Congress. In March 2nd of 1889, they created the reservations, and this is Pine Ridge Reservation. We're located in the southwestern corner of South Dakota. We have a population of about 35,000 tribal members that live here. We have an enrollment of tribal members that is nearing 50,000 people. So that means that there's 50,000, close to 50,000 tribal members across the United States from our particular tribe. We have our own government, where we have a tribal council that we vote on and elect, and they're just like your Congress in the United States. We have a president and a vice president for our tribe, and that tribal president generally connects to all of the other tribes through a system called National Congress of American Indians, where a lot of the vision of each individual tribe is taken forward, and that is also how we work directly with the United States government. So it's we have our own government, so that means we have our own courts, we have our own police, we have our own fire, and the role of that tribal council is to ensure and take care of the people that reside on that reservation.
Okay, great. Last round of questions for our on-camera groups here. So make it a good one. Greater Johnstown Middle, it is your turn.
What does your last name mean?
It is, it's a great question, and I really thank you for that. My name was Turkelson up until a few months ago. I went back into my family history and I researched it, and this was my great grandmother's name, and she was Hunkpapa. She came from another area further up north of the United States, and her name is Rattling Hawk, and I took on that name, and I'm so excited to have that name. And what it means is there's different words in that how you define rattling. Just like you would in English, it could mean different things. In this case, her name, Rattling Hawk, meant it was a sound from her voice that was similar to a hawk. So I interpret that in looking at that as that she had a beautiful voice, and that she sang high on the hilltops of and shared her voice that way. So, to me, that's what it means. Rattling Hawk means that she had a beautiful voice, and she also carried that forward, and she never changed her name. So I have taken it and just very humble to have that. And I really thank you for that question.
Thanks, Johnstown Middle. Next up is Mark Twain Middle. If you're ready for your last question for Monica.
And we have two. Can we ask two?
Sure.
Okay, do you want to go first, Stephen? Go ahead.
How do you feel about technology advancing?
I think it's great. I think what we're doing today is amazing, that I can come to you from here without really having to jump on a plane or to jump in a car, and I have reduced my emissions. So I think that technology is really great, and I look forward to how we can continue to use technology to help us do the work we do and maintaining our connections and our relationships with Unchi Maka.
How did the tribes or communities kind of like form together?
Well, as what we have together is we have several communities that come together on a regular basis, and we do a lot of things called honorings. So we just recently had from our community, the first time ever, one of our community members became Miss Indian World in the rodeo world. So we're going to come together and really honor her and respect her for that, because it's such an amazing thing. So that's one way we come together. As tribes, as I mentioned, we have the 7 council fires. So we come together as many tribes and have meetings and discussions and conversations, and we also share stories and we share songs and all that. So it's really we come together through different ways, powwows as people call them, or we call them wachipis. We come and we share stories and songs and dance, and it's really a great social gathering. We also have spiritual gatherings that aren't really open to the public, but we maintain our spiritual and our connected ways. So we come together in many, many ways through individual tribes internally, and then as groups of tribes, we still continue to come together.
Great questions. And last but certainly not least, Daniel from Brooklyn. Here we go. Last question for Monica.
How much of the Great Plains is remaining, and how much do the Native and what fraction of the Great Plains do the Native Americans own?
Great question. I don't recall the exact number of, I'll put it in acres, of the Northern Great Plains. It's it's huge because it covers portions of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, some of Nebraska, and goes further down. Of that area, though, I can tell you that the tribe's fraction, or piece as you called it, is about 10 million acres are what tribes continue to live on and control in their own governmental structures.
Well, those were all really, really great questions. We are just about at time, so I want to send a huge thank you to Monica for joining us today and sharing such insights and inspiration to all of us. I also want to thank our on-camera guests that joined us. You all had great questions, and everyone that was watching from the website, especially those that submitted questions. We appreciate it. Before we head off, I just want to share some resources in case people are interested. Teachers and parents, especially if you didn't see it, there is a packet that you can download from our website that contains a lot of material related to Monica's presentation. It includes some Kahoots on the Northern Great Plains and grasslands. There's some bell ringer and quiz questions in there, and videos, including the video that Monica shared in her presentation. So make sure to check that out. It's on the Conservation in the Classroom webpage within Monica's events description. You can find the link to it. And if you have additional questions that we didn't have time for today, you can always email them to wildclassroom@WWF-US.org. I'd be happy to pass those along to Monica, and we can try to get some answers back to you here. And mark your calendars for our last event of 2021 coming up on December 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll be joined by Emily Grilly, who works on the WWF Antarctica program. She's going to be talking to us all about Antarctica and her work with penguins. So it's going to be a really fun event. Make sure you join us. And thanks everybody for being here. We're going to bring everyone back on camera one last time to say goodbye. Monica, thank you so much. We'll see everybody next time.